everybody, and welcome to Bridge Church Online. My name is Jono.
And I'm Kori, and we're so glad that you are joining us this morning for the next in our series on mental health and well-being. Later on, Donna, who you may remember from last week, is going to be speaking to us about anger.
You know what makes me angry?
What?
The weather. As soon as Boris says we can meet in gardens, up to 6 people, it rains and it's cold.
Stop being so negative. Speaking of negative thinking, my Uncle Keith, who you may have met in Bridge Pub if you've been a part of that, has made us a quiz on negative thinking to get you thinking.
Hi everyone, it's Family Faith Football Quiz time. Now this time our theme is mental health, so we've got a quiz with a difference for you. It's going to be all about negative thinking. Often thinking negatively can spiral quickly, resulting in lowering our mood substantially. So it helps if we are aware of the different styles of negative thought. There are 6 commonly recognised styles of negative thinking. A. Mind reading, which is when we are thinking that we know what someone else is thinking. It's about us and it's negative. You end up reacting to what you imagine they're thinking. B. Filtering, when we see only the bad and ignore the good. For example, getting 90% in a test, but beating ourselves up because we didn't get the extra 10%. C. All or nothing, when we see something as black or white with no middle ground. Like saying there's no point in me taking the test if I don't get 100%. D. Blowing things out of all proportion, when small things become major disasters, like having one bad driving lesson and thinking you're never going to be able to drive. E. Labelling, when we talk to ourselves in a negative or critical way. For example, if we make a mistake and we call ourselves a loser or an idiot. And F. Fortune telling, when we think we know what the future holds and it's not good. For example, someone might be being furloughed at the moment and they think that when the furlough's over, they're not going to get a job at all and they'll never get one again. So this is how the quiz is going to work. I'm going to depict 6 footballers thinking negatively about a situation. You've got to guess which of these 6 negative thinking styles the player is displaying. Here we go. Number 1.
Can't believe I missed that. I'm such an idiot. I'm a complete loser.
Did you get it? It was E. Labelling, when we talk to ourselves in a negative or critical way. Here's number 2.
I'm on the bench again. Why doesn't he play me? He just doesn't like me. He doesn't think I fit into his team. I bet he thinks I'm too opinionated. I think he wants me to leave.
That was A. Mind reading, when we think we know what someone else is thinking. Here's number 3.
4-0. Can't believe it. I'm going to lose my place soon. The other goalie will be back from injury in a few weeks, so he'll be straight back in the team. The transfer window opens in a few weeks, my contract's up and they're not going to renew it. I've been on such bad form recently that no other team is going to want me, so I'll be out of work and we won't be able to pay the mortgage.
That was F. Fortune telling, when we think we know what the future holds and it's not good. Number 4.
We've got to start the season on minus 12 points. We'll never reach the promotion places. What's the point? We might as well just write off this season and not bother playing it at all.
That was C. All or nothing, when we see something as black or white with no middle ground. Here's number 5.
I can't believe it, not again. That's it, I'm going to be out for the rest of the season now. I'll lose my place, never get back in the squad. I'll have to leave. In fact, my career could be over.
That was D. Blowing things out of all proportion, when small problems become major disasters. And finally, here's number 6.
A 2-0 win and I scored both goals, but I can't believe I missed that chance in the last minute. If only I'd scored that, I'd have had my first hat-trick of the season.
Did you get it? That was B. Filtering, when we see only the bad and ignore the good. How did you do? If you got all 6 correct, here's your prize. Thanks a lot. See you soon.
Thanks for that, Keith. It's just a bit of a shame about your football club, isn't it?
Again, stop being negative.
Alright, I'll be positive. At least Bolton are unbeaten since March. How about that?
Thanks, Keith. So now we're going to go over to a lady called Alex, who's going to share with us the first part of her life story.
Well, good morning, Alex. Thank you for being willing to do this interview this morning.
No.
Perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and perhaps then some key moments about your life so far.
Yeah, so I was born in South Africa, actually. So I lived near Durban in South Africa, and then I emigrated to the UK when I was 11 years old. So that's quite a big thing, really, to sort of change cultures and to change lifestyle at that sort of age. But I'm quite an adaptable person, so I coped reasonably well with it, I think. Yeah, but I can remember sort of being teased about my accent. So overnight, I sort of learned an English one and still have an English one, and actually can't even impersonate a South African one now. So yeah, that was quite a big thing for me. Always from the age of about 4 wanted to be a nurse. So that was just something that I just knew I was going to be a nurse when I grew up, and so that's where my life sort of led me. And I trained at Adam Brooks in Cambridge after school to be a nurse, and absolutely loved nursing. Trained as an adult nurse first, and then as a children's nurse. And I did my children's nursing in Peterborough. And while I was there, I met Graham, who was visiting his parents, and I met Graham, and we then became a couple, and we got married. And we'd always planned that we'd like to have lots of children, so we always thought we'd have 4. And we tried to have children, and that didn't happen for us, unfortunately. And so in the end, we adopted. And I think adoption's always been something. In fact, when we talked about having children, it was something we both thought we would be interested in doing, and thought maybe we'll have a couple of our own and then either adopt or foster 2 others. So in the end we adopted 2 little girls from China called Martha and Esther, who have absolutely completed our lives, really. And yeah, they've had big adjustments to make, and it's always interesting, we always laugh in our family to say that Dad's the only one who's so boring that to be born in England, and that yeah, they both had to make this huge amount of change as little girls, but they've coped really, really well with it. And yeah, they've brought us so much joy. So there's probably some big things in my life, really. And I was brought up in a Christian family, and so faith was always on my radar. And I can never not ever think of a time when I didn't believe in God, really. But I can remember listening to a guy called David, I can't remember his name, I think it's called David, speaking at a service when I was probably about 14, and just being absolutely, I just knew that it had gone from a head level to a real heart level, and that I at that point had a relationship with a God who loved me, and that God's been with me all my life. And I look back on my life, and I can see where God has really gone before me, behind me, and both sides of me.
Yeah, so yeah, adopting has obviously been a key moment in your life after what must have been quite a difficult time. Mm-hmm. Have there been any other things in your life, Alex, which have not gone according to plan, health-wise or anything in that kind of area?
Yeah, so I probably about the time when we adopted Esther, I can remember just feeling very, very tired. And I remember thinking, oh, I know what people say, that, 1 is many more than 2, or 2 is many more than 1, sorry, or 1 more is many more than just having 1. And yeah, and I can just remember feeling absolutely sapped of energy. And then soon after that, I started to notice that my legs really weren't doing what my brain was telling them to do. And I can remember saying to Graham, oh, I'm a bit worried about my legs. And my dad had a neurodegenerative condition, which was a progressive disease, which affected his legs. So immediately some alarm bells started to go for me. But I just thought, oh, hopefully if I just put my head in the sand, it'll go away. But I did have a real big worry about it. And yeah, and I remember my dad saying to me once, you should go see a physio about that limp. And I said to him, do you recognise it? And he said, no. But I knew at that moment that he had recognised it. And I can remember just being so upset for quite a few days after that. But we had thought about adopting, and well, we were in the process of adopting a third baby. And I just thought, I can't go and get anything medically that they might say you can't do this adoption. So I held off and held off and held off. And for the third adoption, it was at the time when China was starting to shut down its adoptions, but not saying, right, we're going to stop. They just made it a longer and longer and longer process. We, in the end, I was starting to trip up, and it was a lot of people were saying to me, you limping? I was saying, no. But I knew that I was, and more people were saying it to me. And so in the end, I went to see a physio, hoping the physio would just say, oh, I'll do X, Y, Z, and then you'll be fine. But actually, I saw her do my reflexes, and as a nurse, I knew my reflexes weren't normal, and I could see this lady's face, sort of, best way I can describe it, dark. And she said to me, I know you really want to do this adoption, and I know you don't want to go to a doctor, but you really need to go to a doctor today or as soon as possible. And she said, I'm going to write you a letter. And it was one of those moments where all your worst fears sort of land. And I remember Graham and I sat while we were waiting for her to write the letter, and I was just weeping. And and it was just one of those moments where you just think, gosh, this isn't a maybe, this is a definite. And then I did go to my doctor, and he then did another full examination, and I said, what do you think it is? And he said, well, in someone of your age, we'd be looking at MS or a brain tumour. And brain tumour hadn't even been on my radar. But so I then had a weekend of just utter wailing, and I can remember we'd just put a new fire in our lounge, and I just remember getting through the day for the kids and sort of putting on this face of everything being all right, and then as soon as they're in bed, just sitting by this fire, just crying. And so cutting a long story short, I had scans and examinations, and they said to me, we think you have probably what your father has. And my dad had never been given a name for it, and they said it's not curable, and it's a progressive disease which will get much worse and worse over time, but we will do our best for you in that. And and then really at that point hitting a bit of a wall of pain.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, thank you for sharing that, Alex. That's really good. In part 2 of this interview, I'm going to talk to you about how you cope with that.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, over to part 2.
Thanks, Alex, for your honesty there, and we're looking forward to hearing the rest of what you have to say a little bit later on.
Absolutely. Well, now it's time to hear the message from Donna. So sit back, relax. If you have one, grab your cup of tea, and let's listen out to see what God wants to speak to us this morning.
Hello, I'm here to talk about anger. My name is Donna. What does anger look like on the outside? And I think anger can be a raised voice, shouting, grimacing, growling, a stare, a downcast look, red in the face, swearing, smashing things, hitting others. And what does anger feel like on the inside? It can be hot, cold, boiling, numb, a rush of thoughts, or a sense of detachment. Many years ago, Johnny Rotten sang "Anger is an energy" in the song Rise, but his lyrics also go, I could be wrong, I could be right. And anger is in itself neither good nor bad, it's what you do with it that matters. Anger in today's society, I think, is often seen as unsightly or scary, inappropriate, unladylike. And many mental health problems and some physical problems have been caused or exacerbated by people denying or repressing their anger. For a while now, ways of supporting our mental and emotional well-being have included owning and normalising anger during times of grief or loss, for example, the death of someone very close to us or a major disaster. Managing our anger if it becomes a threat to others or ourselves, and we hear that there are lots of anger management courses around. I found an article which suggested that there are 4 types of anger. Now, I'm sure there are many more types, but I wanted to focus on these 4. The first one they've termed justifiable anger. And that's the kind of anger that comes with a moral outrage at things like the oppression of human rights, damage caused to the environment, evidence of injustice and law breaking, violence and murder. And justifiable anger can happen at a global level. It can be experienced by many people, or it can be at a local community level. I may feel anger if I see someone punched needlessly in the street. Then there's annoyance anger. This is the one which is about things like other drivers on the road, queues at the shops, parents not listening to you, the last packet of crisps that you go to get and they're gone, but the bag is still there in the cupboard. Those annoying anger things. The third one is more serious. It's aggressive anger. Using angry tones, behaviours and threats to control or dominate others. And this may be conscious or subconscious, hence the anger management courses. It can, if unchecked, become bullying, oppression, abuse, and it's along the legal spectrum, so you could be committing crimes. And the fourth type of anger is that of temper tantrums. And this is often irrational and maybe an overreaction, a perceived overreaction to what the situation is. And this is not solely the behaviour of children, but we know it classically in the temper tantrums of the terrible twos. It can involve screaming, crying, stomping, sulking, throwing things. It's mainly physical, but not particularly threatening to others. Although, if it is an adult throwing things in what seems like uncontrollable rage, then it would feel threatening. And the temper tantrum type of anger can definitely evolve into one of the other types. So to sum up, I talked about justifiable anger, annoyance anger, aggressive anger, and temper tantrum anger. And I'm now going to tell you a story. This is a true story. It's something I witnessed recently. And I am not going to test you, but I just wonder if you could try to spot the 4 types of anger within this story. So I was in Aldi a couple of weeks ago. And I'd got to the checkout with my basket of food. And there was a husband and wife couple who were in the aisle next to me. The husband had a basket like me, and the wife was behind him with a trolley. Now, all the checkout staff had raised voices, but to be fair, they were operating behind a screen. So it was a tense tone, a fast, hurry along there kind of tone. It kind of went like this: bring your baskets with you and load your goods back into the basket immediately. Don't pack at the checkouts. It was quite a tense atmosphere. Anyway, the husband goes first. He's wearing a mask, and he says in a friendly way to his cashier, "It's my wife behind, so you don't need to rush me along. It's all good." The cashier, still shouting, says, "This is about my safety. I don't have a mask like you do. Show some consideration. Move along." I was trying to concentrate on my own shopping, so I didn't follow all of it, but angry words are said on both sides. They end up both shouting, and I heard this: they were calling each other idiots. My cashier has also spoken to me in a loud voice, and what I did was I smiled and I do as she says. But now my cashier looks angry too. She leans past the safety plastic and shouts at the husband in the next aisle, "If you carry on, you will be removed. Don't talk to him like that." The husband's cashier steps out of his booth and they continue to row. Now they are rowing about the technicalities of whether he should have come into the shop with his wife. And it's getting quite pedantic. Him saying, "I'm not in with my wife," and the cashier's shouting, "Yes, you are, you idiot." A manager comes, but the shouting and the wide eyes and the flailing hands continue. The cashier is now shouting and laughing, "Yeah, he's the idiot. He called me an idiot. Anyone else think I'm an idiot? Well, anyone?" He's parading up and down. As I bend down to gather my bags of shopping, I whisper to myself and maybe to God, "Yes, I think he's an idiot." It was time for me to get away. This anger and this row had been nothing to do with me. And I could see some of the bigger picture. Are the cashiers trained to handle the emotions that come with a pandemic? What support is there for everyone, staff and customers? Was fear or ego the main driver? Who knows? But the rate of infection, the R factor that we've been hearing about, the R number for anger was well above 1 at that moment. And I didn't want to catch it, so I made a hasty exit, my peace of mind just about intact. After that story, it's probably hard for you to believe that anger is neutral. But anger, like I said, is neutral. It's how we respond with it, how we express it. Anger is a tool that helps us assess or respond to upsetting situations. Anger, hatred, vengeance are not nice feelings. But sometimes they are the necessary footholds to help us climb out of a deeper, worsened pit of despair, depression, fear, or disempowerment. Without anger, people will stay very low. Anger is also a form of self-expression. In the film Pretty Woman, Richard Gere's rich yet lonely character says that it took him years of expensive therapy to say out loud, "I am angry with my father." He didn't shout or scream, he just said it calmly. But it stopped him being angry with the whole world because he had that awareness of what had been the trigger for his anger. Now, there are many examples of anger in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, and they're often with the same fourfold pattern. What tends to happen in the Bible, in the Old Testament Bible, is that we have what's called a truth trigger. So one of our characters will hear a new truth, and that truth will trigger a feeling. So there's a truth trigger, which is a situation or a discovery or a lie. But anyway, it's come to light. And the second part of the pattern is you'll find in the Bible simple verbs to describe the feeling of anger. They're not like all the things I described at the beginning. They're just verbs. He felt angry. She felt downcast. The third part is usually a conversation. It may be an angry exchange, or it may be a cunning discussion. It's usually about confrontation or manipulation. But the person who has had the truth trigger, who has experienced feelings of anger, then starts to have conversations with someone. It might be with an ally. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to manage this situation. The fourth link in the chain is that of action. And actually it propels the story along. There's maybe a feud, a murder, an escape. It's a new plot, that it goes in a new direction. And there's a modern therapeutic technique which seems to have taken this fourfold pattern and turned it into a healthier practice. And that technique is called REST. REST stands for relax, evaluate, set an intention, take an action. So REST, the R, relax. That's when you get that truth trigger, when something happens that changes things. What the therapy says, REST says, take maybe deep breaths or find a way to calm down. Self-care and self-soothing is so important. It may sound selfish, but actually we can't listen so well when we're angry. We can't listen to ourselves and we can't listen to others. So the first step is relax. The second, the E, is evaluate. What's actually triggered this anger? And if we can evaluate from a more relaxed place, we might even be able to look at what was my part in it, or what do I want or need that I'm not getting at the moment? Could I get it elsewhere? It might be that as you evaluate, you realise that you are completely powerless, and that's triggering your anger. The S is for set an intention. Before we rush in, we tell ourselves, and maybe God, what we intend to do. We can chew it over, or we can just spend a few seconds on it. And that is like pressing the pause button just for a few more moments before we get to T, which is take an action. So we think about our action. It might be that you want to make an apology. It might be that you really want to go and speak your peace of mind. It might be that you want to write a letter, or you might want to get involved in a protest. You might want to just go to bed and pull the duvet over your head and shut out the world. If it still feels right, helpful, safe or sensible, then we take that action. I'm going to finish my talk with another story. This time it's from the New Testament. And this is a story that some of you may know as the story of the lost son, or the story of the prodigal son, or the story of the kind father. And it's from Luke's Gospel in the New Testament Bible. So there is a man who has 2 sons. He runs a farm, and yet he's got 2 sons, and the younger one says, "Can I have my inheritance now?" So the man isn't even dead yet, but the son wants his inheritance. And the father, the dad, gives him his inheritance. The son goes off, has a whale of a time of wild living, and he spends the lot. And then he finds himself in need of a job because he's got no money. He takes a job well below the minimum wage, looking after pigs. It pays so little that he ends up eating the pig's food. He's desperate. So he decides to go home and admit to his dad all that he's done. He recognises that he's done some bad things. He rejected his dad. He became very selfish. And he rejected his God as well. He comes from a religious family. He plans to say, "Dad, I'm not worthy to come back as your son, but I am desperate, and will you hire me for work?" But he doesn't get to say that because as he's approaching the farm, his dad sees him and his dad rushes out, runs to meet him, hugs him, kisses him, welcomes him home. Now the older son gets back at the end of a day's work, and by the time he gets home, there is a party in full swing for the younger son. The older son is angry. He refuses to go and join in with this party. And the dad comes out and he begs his oldest son to come and join them. The oldest son is so angry at how unfair this situation is. He explains his anger to his dad. And his dad says, "Son, all that I have here is yours. You could have had anything. You could have done with it whatever you wanted at any time. It is yours now, and it always has been. But your younger brother has come home. I love you both, and I am delighted. And of course, I want to celebrate because I missed him." It's a great story about anger. The youngest son had no anger. He could easily have started to get angry when all his money had gone and felt sorry for himself. But he didn't. He saw the part he played. He recognised his greed and his lust and how his self-will had contributed to his plight. He had a very humble attitude, a desperate humble attitude, when he went back to his dad. His expectations were low, but he humbly asked his dad for a job. And I think a message for us is perhaps to place expectations on the ground. If we place our expectations of others on the ground, we are much less likely to get angry. It doesn't mean we tolerate any old abuse, but often anger comes from when we expect something and someone doesn't behave how we expect them to behave. So place expectations on the ground. Now we look at the dad. He had no anger. He was delighted to have his son home. He could have got angry at the older son. He could have accused the older son of spoiling everything, of spoiling the celebrations. But he didn't. He had compassion for both of them. He listened to both of them, and his aim was to bring his family together again in love. And the message there for us, I think, is about having an attitude of gratitude. When you are grateful for things, and my girls and I, every night, we say thank you to God for something, one thing each. And on a good day, we say thank you for lots of things. But it's hard to be angry when you're being grateful. Finally, we come to the oldest son. He was angry. He'd been happy with his lot, but now he was jealous. He couldn't see clearly how good his life had been. He couldn't see how awful his brother's life had turned out. We don't get to hear what happened next, but I kind of hope that the oldest son was able to use the REST principles, relax, evaluate, set an intention, take an action, and I hope that he was able to take the action of stepping into the party, into all the love and the celebrations, and leave his anger at the door. And even in the older brother, there is a message for us. Don't let anger have a permanent room in your house, because it will steal your peace of mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. That was so interesting.
Thank you. We're now going to go back to Andy and Alex to find out how Alex dealt with the diagnosis that she'd received.
So, Alex, how did you cope with that? I mean, that must have been life-changing. You know, one of those moments where you thought, life is never actually going to be the same again. How did you cope with that, both in terms of maybe not just physically, but your mental health and well-being, and then perhaps in terms of your faith?
Yeah. So yeah, I think at the beginning, in all honesty, it was just absolute pain that I'd never could have imagined, really. So all my dreams, so my nursing, the way that I imagined that I would be with my children, which would be teaching them to play tennis, running in the garden, going on long walks, going on adventurous holidays. Suddenly that was all, if not in the very first instance, but in the long term, that was not going to be possible. And it just felt absolutely awful. And I went into quite a dark place, really, where I just was crying all the time and saying to God, why would you stop me doing these things, which I thought were really good things, and you know, that I was going to be able to adopt more children, and yeah, to have all of that just taken away from me. But it's just massive loss, really. And I guess because my dad had the same condition, I could see what was going to come. So yeah, I just knew that I needed some help with it, and God was a real comfort. I'm always grateful that even in the very hardest times in my life, it has always pushed me to God and not away from Him. And I've just been grateful for that. And whether that's God's Holy Spirit or just my nature, probably a bit of both, that it just has always pushed me to God. And I found great comfort there, but it was still, I felt like I needed help with it. So I went to have some counselling, and it was life-changing, really. It was a place where I could just talk it out. I could talk about all the things, you know, what if I need a hoist? What if I'm incontinent? What if I can't look after myself and have to be in bed all the time? And just say out loud all the things that were stewing inside of me. And learning some coping strategies for that, really.
Yeah. So I was to say, that you're actually a trained counsellor now. So have any of these things equipped you, do you think, to be the person that you are today?
Without a doubt, I think. Hopefully it's made me a more empathic person, or somebody that can just sit with somebody else's pain. So not necessarily feeling that I need to fix it, but just to sit and let it be there, let it be important, and let it be tended to gently. So yeah, I think hopefully I'll be a better counsellor because of my own experience, and I hope it's made me a better person. And I think really what I've seen massively in it is how God has gone before me. So I'd started to do some work on spiritual care in my job, and looking at how the charity could deliver spiritual care. And so out of that came the job that I do now, which is the chaplain at the Children's Hospice. So in a way, God knew that I would need a new job, but He'd already given me that new job before I knew I needed it. So there was lots of things where, looking back, I could see that God had just prepared the way for me. And yeah, I think in my work, disability maybe takes me to people more easily, that I come a little bit broken. I don't come as somebody that's all organised and sorted out. I come to children who have degenerative disease, who have progressive illness, and I come with mine. And that's not to say, oh, I know how you feel. That's just saying maybe I've known that broken feeling, and I'm just forever grateful that I've been able to get back on my feet. The irony of that, but get back on my wobbly feet, and it's my endeavour, I think, to try and live well with my disease, and to just be who I am in that, And it you know, the number of conversations I have if I ever go to town, hobbling along, I have so many conversations with old people that start talking about their hips, or many people say, "Oh, I love your walker." So I have like a walking frame with wheels, and it is quite a good one. And people quite often say, "Where did you get it? Can I take a photograph of it?" So it opens up so many conversations.
Yeah. So you said that you're the chaplain at the Children's Hospice, and you're also pastoral lead for the Bridge Church.
Yeah.
If someone is watching this and is identifying with you in some way to do with loss or just a life change or whatever that is, what would you say to them?
I'd say to them that I absolutely understand the darkness and the excruciating pain that can be there, and actually where you don't necessarily feel like you've got the energy to do anything. But I would just encourage you to reach out to others, reach out to church, reach out to us at Bridge, or maybe to reach out to a counsellor. And what I'd say is if you were able to reach out to us at Bridge Church, we'd be able to support you in finding counselling if that's something that you might need to do. But I think community, people around you that can just sit with you in your pain is so important.
Alex, that's been pretty amazing. Thank you for sharing your life and some of the tough stuff that's been going on. So once again, thank you so much for opening up, being transparent, for being Alex. We love you. We appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Andy.
God bless you very much. Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Alex, so much. That was so interesting, and it's so great to have such a real life story with us this morning, so thank you. And look, guys, if you found anything that we've spoke about this morning difficult, do get in contact with us. Get in contact with Alex. Her email address is below, but I just urge you to reach out if you're struggling in any way, shape or form, or if you've got any questions.
Absolutely, I echo that. And if you've got any questions about faith, or you'd like to delve a little deeper, it's not too late to join our Alpha course. It's just a short course that is on a Monday evening in Zoom. The introduction session was the week just gone, but it doesn't matter, it's not too late to join. And if that's something that interests you, please do get in touch, or you can sign up on the website.
Absolutely. Well look guys, sadly that brings us to the end of our first session here this morning. But if you'd like to delve a bit deeper into life source with us, join us on Zoom. You'll be able to find the entry details on our website this morning.
Other than that, have a great week.
Have a great week, guys.